Hello, I'm Bjorn, and welcome back to the Thunderbolts. Today we're doing Act 3, and currently I'm in a place you don't have to worry about, man. Nothing, don't worry about it. We're just in a place, you know. Well, it's the green screen. There's nothing else going on here, man. What are you talking about, man? And let's just go into the Thunderbolts Act 3, man. Thunderbolts 2 Act 3. If you haven't seen the first movie or Acts 1 and 2 of this one, what are you doing here? Go back and watch those right now, young man. I'm very disappointed in you. But also like and subscribe before you leave. Please. Thank you. It helps us tremendously. Alright, let's go into it.
We're going to pick up right where we left off. We see Dallas sitting in the Quinjet. Her head is in her hands. She has the ship set to autopilot. Songbird asks the obvious question they're all wondering. What happened? Dallas says, Walker is going to fight him anyway. Speed Demon says, God, Sentry will kill him. Dallas says, he said he thought he had a chance. Speed Demon says, yeah, maybe he does. But he sounds skeptical. Dallas says, he's the best fighter I know. I think he can do it. The entire Quinjet falls silent. No one wants to say what they all know. U.S. Agent isn't coming back from that fight. We see Mach 1 approach the control panel in the front of the ship. He looks it over and smiles. This is a pretty badass setup, he says. No one says anything in reply. We see Mach 1 turn and look at the radar. He frowns. Dallas, we've got a bogey approaching at rapid speed. Really rapid. What is that? Dallas says, what? That's impossible. No one will be flying to intercept in a storm like that. She's cut off as Speed Demon says, Sentry! Oh God, he found us! Brace! He yells. The camera moves outside the Quinjet and we see Sentry flying towards the aircraft at incredible speed. His hair is drenched by the rain. He looks down at U.S. Agent's shield in his hand. Then he throws it. The shield twirls in the air at incredible speed and slams into the side of the Quinjet, leaving a massive gash in the metal before slamming into one of the engines. The ship begins to plummet down towards the ocean. Dallas pulls up desperately on the steering wheel. The ship begins to slowly lift up, but it's still crashing. We can see stuff being sucked out into the air through the large hole in the ship. Ghost looks over and sees an echo of herself get sliced in half by lasers, right where Atlas is standing. She quickly unbuckles herself and dives as the ship lists. She's able to knock Atlas aside. Just as she does, two lasers slice through the side of the ship, barely missing the both of them. The ship begins to slice into two even pieces and begins to plummet straight down. Dallas screams, "We're gonna crash!" Songbird says no. She runs and dives out the hole made by the laser beams and forms lasers on her back. She pulls a flare from her belt and lights it. She creates a massive hand of hard light and catches the ship, slowing its crash. Lightning strikes in the distance and we can see a small tropical island below them. Songbird screams with the effort as she tries to slow the ship. It breaks through her first hard light construct and she forms another one and begins to slow the ship again. Suddenly we see Mach 1 appear next to her. He grabs the bottom of the ship and activates the thrusters in his legs. The ship slowly begins to stop at the plummet. Mach 1 says, "We got this." Suddenly, Sentry slams into him. The two of them spiral into the air, off into the storm where we can't see them. The ship begins to drop again. Songbird is still trying to hold it, but it's not enough. Inside the ship, we can see the Thunderbolts that can't fly desperately holding on for their lives. Atlas says, "We're gonna die here. Why'd you take me from the prison? I had a good thing going there." Speed Demon says, "Calm down, we're gonna be fine." Queen looks at him and says, "I can help them." She unfolds her wings and starts to head towards the torn hole in the ship. Speed Demon catches her arm. "Don't! You have no way to attack, he'll just kill you." Queen says, "I won't do nothing. They need my help." She pulls her arm free and dives into the hole in the side of the Quinjet as her wings unfold. She's caught in the wind and twirls towards the fight. We cut back to Mach 1 and Sentry spiraling through the air. Mach 1 manages to free his hand and launches a laser blast into Sentry. Sentry's blinded by it and lets go of Mach 1. Mach 1 kind of spirals back and then regains control of his suit. He says, "My turn, dickhead." A couple of small rockets launch out of the back of his suit. They slam into Sentry, exploding into a puff of fire. As the fire dissipates, we can see Sentry is unharmed. Mach 1 looks baffled. "The fuck are you?" he says. Sentry says, "I am Sentry." He flies forward and grabs Mach 1. Using all of his strength, he rips Mach 1 into 2 pieces. Blood and guts fly everywhere. Recreating this panel, which is a badass panel, by the way. That panel was so hard. I saw that, and I was like, that's going in the movie. Rip in peace for Mach 1. Gone, but kind of forgotten. He wasn't in this one for long. Sorry, guys. His face now covered in blood. Sentry turns his attention back to Songbird. He blasts his laser vision towards her. She sees it coming just in time and forms a wall of hard light. When she does, her other hard light construct falls, and the ship plummets back towards the ground. Songbird forms a giant fist of hard light and slams it into Sentry as he flies towards her. She tries to form another hand to grab the hard light construct to catch the Quinjet, but Sentry recovers from her previous attack and slams into her before she can catch the ship. It begins to plummet towards the island. This time, there's no saving it. Songbird yells, "No!" as the ship falls. Sentry says, "You can't save them now. No one can." Songbird says, "Shut up!" She amplifies the words into one of her screams. The sound waves slam into Sentry. He staggers back, dropping Songbird. We see a small trickle of blood run from his nose. The sound waves hurt him. Songbird is too distracted to notice. Now that she's free, her full attention is back on the falling jet. She dives down with her wings unfolded, trying to catch it, but it's already too far gone. We see the inside of the Quinjet. Dallas is holding on for dear life as the ship plummets. We see Atlas grow as large as he can and brace for impact. Ghost phases. We see pieces of rubble and debris from inside the ship pass right through her, as though she were a ghost. In all the chaos, we see Speed Demon begin to run as fast as he can. Time slows as we get like a bullet time sort of thing. Slow motion. Speed Demon wraps around the inside of the Quinjet, running along the floor, which is now upside down, as it twists in the air. Out of the torn hull, we can see the ground growing closer. Slowly, however, because he's moving so quickly. He moves around floating pieces of glass and metal until he reaches Dallas. He grabs her and pulls her along at super speed. He pulls her until they reach the edge of the Quinjet. Come on, he says. The ground is so close, but not close enough. Moments before the ship is going to impact, Speed Demon jumps. He presses off a piece of floating rubble in the air and rolls onto the sand. Dallas hits the sand too, and they roll for about 15 feet. Behind them, we see the Quinjet explode into the beach in a ball of fire. We see Atlas crawl free from the rubble. His hands are partly on fire, and he begins to roll back and forth in the sand. He's bloodied and burnt, and collapses into the sand, passing out. Dallas opens her eyes and looks around. We can see a small amount of blood on her face from a head injury in the crash. Dallas says, "What happened?" Speed Demon says, "Ship crashed, but I got you out." Her eyes look to the burning pile of rubble that is the ship, and we see the bloody shield embedded in the engine. She begins to cry as her face turns to rage. Then she accepts it. He's dead. Speed Demon says, "I'm sorry." We're going to cut back to the Songbird fight. She takes a few hits but blocks many of Sentry's attacks and lasers with her hard light. Suddenly Queen appears and flies at Sentry. She punches him across the face, but it does nothing. She falls in line next to Songbird for a second, hovering in the air. Songbird says, "That won't work. He's too tough." Queen says, "I'm not trying to hurt him." Not directly. Queen flies off and dives at Sentry once more, hitting him and flying away. Over and over again she does it. We can see it's frustrating Sentry as he tries to catch her, but she's too quick. Then we see spiders begin to climb across Sentry's face. She'd been delivering spiders onto his body, using her fists as a transport vehicle, basically. Kind of a neat use of her power. Sentry begins to swat at them as they begin to run webs across his face, blocking his eyesight. He swats and pulls, trying to grab them, but they're too quick, moving around. And every time he hits himself, he kind of hurts himself. He manages to kill a lot of the spiders, so Queen tries coming back in for another hit. But Sentry is ready this time. He tries to hit her, but she sees the attack coming and is able to dodge, just barely. She starts to fly away as Sentry chases her. Queen dives and darts as Sentry grows closer. He fires his laser beams, but Queen barrel rolls, folding her wings back for a second, then letting them out again. She avoids the lasers. She continues dodging and weaving in the air for some time. Queen sees a storm cloud and enters, and we lose sight of Sentry. She stops diving around and hovers in the center of the cloud. We can see occasional lightning strikes building in the clouds, lighting the scene occasionally. The beats of her wing move some of the clouds away, leaving a patch of clear area for her. Suddenly, another lightning strikes, and for a moment we can see the silhouette of Sentry in the cloud behind her. Queen desperately looks around, unable to locate him. Suddenly, Sentry barrels out of the cloud cover, smashing into her. He grabs her wings and crushes them, pulverizing them. He holds her up by the neck as lightning strikes, illuminating the sequence. We can see her crippled, shattered wings, barely able to move on their own. Sentry smiles and drops her. We see her try to fly, but her wings are too crippled. She spirals down into the darkness, plummeting towards the ground below. No one to save her. We're going to cut to Speed Demon standing on the ground and standing next to the wreckage, just where we left him off before. He looks up just in time to see Queen falling through the cloud cover, plummeting towards Earth. She's still trying to catch herself, but it's no use. Her wings are shot. Speed Demon says, "Shit!" He speeds towards her, and we see that like in fast motion. I'm not going to do slow motion for this. Like you just see him like moving like rapidly across the sand. You've seen Speed presented in stuff before. You know what this is like. He barely reaches her in time and catches her falling from the sky. The impact still hurts both him and her, and both of them are sent spiraling to the floor. We see Dallas watching Speed Demon catch Queen when suddenly Sentry lands on the ground in front of her. He looks up and says, "You, Ross's dog. I'm surprised you survived the crash." Dallas says, "You killed John Walker." Sentry says, "And I would do it again." Dallas pulls out her staff and pops it open. This is the staff. I don't know if I mentioned that she has this. I definitely think I did in the first part. It's made of vibranium though, so it's pretty strong stuff. She swings it at Sentry, and he dodges the first blow. But Dallas twirls it back up again in one fluid motion and slams it into his skull. He feels it. Her super strength and the vibranium staff are a deadly combo. We see a small amount of blood run from his mouth. Dallas says, "He had a wife and kid." She hits him again with the staff. "He had a son! How could you, you fucking bastard!" She swings her staff as hard as she can right for Sentry's head, but this time he's ready. He catches it in the air. She tries to pull it free, but his grip is iron tight. His bright yellow eyes turn to look at her. He smiles and bends the vibranium staff like it was putty, snapping it into two pieces. "For what he did," Sentry says. "Killing him like that was too easy. I choked the life from his body, and I'll do the same to you." He slaps Dallas, sending her to the ground. Suddenly, Ghost appears, phasing through the ship. Her mask is half shattered, and there's blood running down her face from the crash. Her sword slices towards Sentry's neck and tinks off it like it's metal. Sentry turns to look at her, amused. A flickering echo of Ghost appears right in front of her. It's quickly cut into two pieces. We hear words echo in the air. "Duck! Duck! Get down!" Ghost throws herself down as Sentry's laser beams pass just above her, narrowly missing her. Ghost scrambles back to her feet. 4 echoes flicker off towards her body. They each run in different directions, heading to Sentry, each trying to attack him with a sword. Each of them die horribly. Ghost stands, still confused by what's going on. We see her head and body flicker. Just in front of her, another echo runs forward. It's also hit by a laser beam passing right through its head. Again, Ghost moves aside, just as the real Sentry fires his lasers. Her eyes go wide. She finally realizes they're warning her of the future. The next chunk of the movie is just a fight sequence of Ghost dodging everything Sentry throws at her. We see all these like echoes coming off her, like flickering off her body, and she's able to sort of know what he's doing. I got this idea from a book called Mistborn, which I have shilled likely 1,000,000 times on this channel. There is a metal in that world that gives you superpowers called atium. And what atium does is it allows the user to see what their opponent or themselves will do a few seconds into the future. This is something different from that, but I loosely got the idea from that. It's such a cool power, and it leads to these very fascinating fights in that book, which will soon be a movie, one hopes, that will be popular, one would also hope. But really, this is just another PSA to telling you to read Mistborn, because oh my god, it's so good, guys. She follows echoes and avoids sure death each time. We can see Sentry becoming aggravated by the fight. Even still, Ghost can't lay a finger on him. Every time she tries, the attacks do nothing. Suddenly, even more echoes explode from Ghost. They all begin to die, and we hear echoing whispers all around her. "Run! Must escape! Sure death! No way out! The only way! Have to escape!" Again, these are like echoes coming from all different directions. Like you could have the audio engineers kind of go crazy with it, make it real creepy and sinister. We see a single echo turn away from the fight and run. While all the others die, this one survives. Ghost turns and follows it, fleeing from Sentry. Sentry spots her and says, "Coward." His eyes glow yellow as he prepares to shoot her in the back with lasers. Then he lurches as something hits him in the back of the head. We see Dallas's broken staff fall to the ground, and Dallas standing back on her feet. There's blood running down her face, but she's alright. We see Atlas stand up next to her, still burned, but ready to fight. He grows larger. Dallas says, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." They begin to sort of go in a fight. Dallas is mostly dodging. She doesn't have her staff anymore, so she's using her fists. But her super strength give her some level of impact to Sentry. We see Atlas growing stronger and quicker depending on how big he is. He kind of deftly moves around Sentry. They sort of do like a tag team thing. You've seen this a lot where like two super strong people tag team someone. But it's still, they're no match. Sentry quickly gets the upper hand. He hits Atlas a few times while he's big and then catches him with a horrible uppercut. It sends him flying into the wreckage of the ship. He's down for the count. Dallas keeps up the fight. She dodges a few strikes, and however, Sentry lands a good haymaker on her, which she blocks with her arm. We can see it leaves a massive bruise on her arm. She throws back a wild punch, but misses. Sentry retaliates to her missed hit and hits her hard in the chest. We see Dallas get sent flying back into sand. She rolls a few feet and lands in a crumpled mess with a broken arm. We can see blood running from a very large cut on her head. Sentry starts to approach Dallas again. As he does, he pulls U.S. Agent's vibranium shield out of the side of the ship. It's unmarred except for where his fist mark is embedded in its center. He slowly approaches Dallas, brandishing the shield. He's going to kill her with the very weapon of her friend. We hear Songbird yell, "Stop it!" Sentry turns around and we see Songbird landing behind him. There's a small trickle of blood from her previous fight. Sentry says, "You again. Insects, all of you." Songbird says, "Back off." The words are amplified into a scream. Again, the impact of it seems to hurt Sentry. He staggers back, then flies forward. Songbird builds a hard light wall which catches him, then forms a fist out of it which slams into Sentry. He's sent back again, but it doesn't stop him for long. They continue like this. Again, I'm not really going to harp on fighting too much because without the visual spectacle of it, describing a fight is just sort of like he gets punched and she gets punched and she does this and he does that. But basically it turns into a slugfest, but Songbird is again on the back foot. This guy is Sentry. I mean, he's very hard to kill. He grows closer and closer to her. She tries to scream at him to hold him back, using all of her amplification powers and hard light, but Sentry gains more and more ground until he's right on her. We see a crack of thunder, and Songbird tries something new. She amplifies the loud sound of the crack of thunder. Sound waves slam into Sentry, and the sand behind him explodes into the air. In several places, we can see the sound waves worked into the sand like a Zen garden for a neat visual. So for those who don't know, when sound waves hit particles of sand, they actually like form the shape of waves. It's really cool, and for a visual for this, it would look like sick, like to really show you the power of her abilities. This is an amplified sound wave unlike anything Songbird's ever made, louder than anything she's ever made. As the sound waves wash over Sentry, we see blood running from his eyes, nose, and mouth. Blood pours from his ears, and he screams. He falls to his knees holding his ears, and sits like that for a few moments. As Songbird struggles to her own feet, she was thrown back by the power of the sound wave. She thinks she's won. He's defeated. There's so much blood, but then Sentry looks up. His face is filled with more rage than ever. Songbird actually hurt him, but it wasn't enough. Sentry begins to approach her. Now she's got nowhere to run. She screams again and again, but just like before, it doesn't work. Sentry keeps moving forward as the sound waves wash over him. He doesn't even react anymore. She slams a fist of hardlight into his face. He doesn't even flinch. He's so close now. Songbird screams one more time, and he reaches out and grabs her arm. She tries to pull it free, but she can't. Sentry snaps the bone. It's so easy for him. We see the bone stick out of her arm as blood sprays. Songbird screams, but this time she can't amplify it. The pain is too much. She tries to form something out of hardlight, but Sentry punches her hard in the stomach. She begins to cough up blood. He pulls her by her broken arm and throws her. She crumples to the ground 30 feet away. We can see that her legs are broken by the impact. She barely breathes, and blood runs from her nose and her mouth. Songbird lays on the ground broken. We see Sentry float into the air above Songbird. The rain drenching his hair, lightning striking in the background. We see the lasers launch from his eyes to finish the kill. The camera flies across the beach to where Speed Demon is. He looks up and sees what's happening. Speed Demon runs. Time slows as his feet pound against the sand. The rain seems suspended midair. The lasers slowly leave Sentry's eyes and approach Songbird. He's too slow. Speed Demon isn't going to make it. As his feet pound into the sand, the kernels of sand fly up and suspend in the air behind him. He says, "Faster." He runs faster and faster, forcing himself harder than he ever has before. In the distance, we see lightning strike again. It's slowed down, slowly climbing across the sky like a creeping vine. In the background as Speed Demon runs, the lasers are growing closer to Songbird. He isn't gonna make it. Speed Demon says, "Faster!" The sound of his voice is muddled and off-kilter. The particles of rain in the air begin to slice his face. He's running so fast that the water tension is cutting him. The lightning bolt reaches its zenith and begins to retract into the background. The laser is almost to its target. He isn't going to make it. Faster! He drives himself forward. He tries again and again, pushing himself faster and faster, faster than he's ever been. Speed Demon moves so fast that time almost seems to stop around him. The lasers move only tiny, tiny fractals of amounts. The rain has sliced Speed Demon's face to ribbons, but he doesn't stop. He throws himself towards Songbird, pushing her out of the way at supersonic speed just as the lasers are about to hit. Instead of hitting Songbird, they rip through his left foot. He trips and falls, rolling about 10 feet until he stops in the sand. We see blood running from the burned wound on his leg. He tries to get up on his feet, but falls over. He's crippled. Sentry is momentarily confused, then he smiles. "You almost traded your life for hers. Noble, in a way. If I didn't know what you were. Treacherer," Sentry says. Speed Demon says through pain, "You have to listen to me. You have to stop. You don't know what you're doing." Sentry says, "I think I do. Now more than ever. You could have had so much, James, but you threw it away. I won't make the same mistake. The power broker would have given you everything." Sentry floats closer to Speed Demon. Speed Demon tries to crawl away in the sand, but can't. His leg is ripped to shreds. Sentry says, This shouldn't have gone this way. You were meant for more. You could have been great." His eyes begin to glow yellow. Suddenly, Queen glides in front of James. She's barely held off the ground by her broken wings. Her feet land awkwardly in the sand. She snarls at Sentry and holds her arms out, as if to protect Speed Demon. The yellow slowly disappears from Sentry's eyes. Sentry says, "What's this now? I thought I already took care of you." Queen says, "I won't let you hurt him." Speed Demon says, "No, Queen, what are you doing? Stop it." Queen looks back at him and smiles. She says, "Thank you, James, for everything." There's a quiver of fear in her voice. She knows what she's doing. Speed Demon says, "No." Sentry lands on the sand, floating to the ground. We see his feet sink deep into it. Blood from Songbird still runs down his arms and legs. Queen trembles with fear, but she's brave. She holds her ground. Sentry slowly walks towards her. His menacing score picks up with each step, growing in intensity and malice. Queen begins to speak as he gets closer. "You followed the broker. She's a monster. She tore me apart, injected me with all her chemicals and serums, and she enjoyed it when I hurt. I could see it in her eyes." We see the silhouette shot of Queen standing tall. We can see her broken wings making the frame almost imbalanced. Sentry steps into the shot, so close to her now. His score continues to grow. His face a mask of anger, rage, and something else. Speed Demon says, "Stop it, Queen. Just run." When she doesn't react, he turns his attention to Sentry. "She didn't hurt the broker. She wasn't there. I was. I did it. I betrayed her. It was me. I pulled the trigger. I shot her." Sentry ignores him. He reaches Queen, and she tries to punch him, but it does nothing. We see James trying to crawl towards Queen. We can see the blood running from his leg into the sand. He yells one last time, "Get away from him, Queen. He only wants me. Don't die for nothing. I'm not worth it." She doesn't listen. She's too focused on Sentry, her fear palpable. She's trembling. Sentry reaches out his hand towards her, his face a mask. We quickly realize he's going to strangle her, just like he did U.S. Agent. The score reaches a fever pitch. It deafens out all sound. We get a shot of his hand slowly moving towards her ominously. We can see the blood coating it. At the last second, it moves aside, not reaching for her throat, but her head. Sentry carefully brushes away a few strands from Queen's face. Carefully brushes away a few strands of hair from Queen's face. Hidden behind it, a small scar is visible, right where it was left when her head was slammed into a box in a shipping container. We see quick images of a flashback. We see the scientists working for the power broker. It's incredible. We pulled the plug on her hours ago. She should have died, but she didn't. She's begun to breathe on her own. Then, to my surprise, she woke up. We see the power broker walk into frame. Is it Project Sentry? Did the dose succeed? Scientist says, no, she has no powers. The only effect of the serum seems to be the coloring of her hair, as it does with all dosed subjects. I think she just got lucky. We could reintroduce her to the brother, tell him we managed to resuscitate her. Broker says, no. I think he's more useful the way he is. He's so full of intense hate, easy to mold. I think we'll do something else with her. We were looking for someone to try Project Antlion on, right? Let's go with that. Scientist says, right. He marks something down on his datapad. We see flashes of them sawing into Queen's back and drilling into her, implanting the wings. Queen is still awake while they do it. They need her neurons firing to make the connection. They slice into her skull and attach the insect communicator to her brain. The camera swings down and we see her scream as they do it. They cut into her and we see her eyes glance over. They're filled with fear and pain. The scene fades away and we linger on Sentry's face as the full realization sets in. This is not just a stranger. It's his sister. He says, Arana? Queen's eyes go wide. She says, how do you... We see James trying to crawl towards Queen. We can see the blood is pooling into the sand, even brighter red than it was before. Speedy says, don't hurt her, she's innocent. He sounds almost faint, like he's losing too much blood. Sentry turns to look at Speed Demon. His eyes are panicked. He looks down at Speed Demon's injured leg, and Songbird's broken body where it's lying in the sand. He looks horrified. Again, Speed Demon begs, please, she didn't do it. It was me, all me. Queen pulls his face back towards her. She understands now too. Robert? Sentry says, Arana, I didn't know... How? He's baffled, confused, horrified. She says, it was the broker. They did experiments on me. He looks down at his hands, then back up to her. His eyes linger on the cybernetics forced into her brain. He's finally realized that he's misunderstood everything. He says, oh God, I'm sorry, I didn't know. He takes a step back, then flies away in panic, leaving behind a dust cloud of sand. We see Queen watch him leave. Confused, she turns her attention to Speed Demon. She runs to where he is in the sand and pulls off a piece of her costume. She uses it to stop the bleeding in his leg, letting a few spiders cling off her body to start wrapping it up with web. Queen says, are you okay? Speed Demon says, I'm peachy. What was that? He just left you. Queen says, he was my brother. She must have gotten to him like she got to me. And real fast, I want to point out, I'm not entirely sure before publishing this video if this twist is going to land or not. I worried this one was too obvious, but no one pointed out to me that they had thought of it while watching the script. So let me know, did this twist actually work or was it too obvious? I like to ask audience for feedback because I use these videos as practice. So let me know if that twist was effective or not. I worry I may have been a little too heavy-handing with the foreshadowing and the making it obvious, you know. But if it landed, let me know because that would be awesome. I tried my best with this one. Speed Demon says, you're his sister? But she's supposed to be dead. She must have lied to him. Snapping back to his senses, Speed Demon remembers where they are. Songbird, we have to help her. We see Queen run over to where Songbird is. Spiders begin to crawl off her costume, and we see them spin up webs like bandages around the wounds. She tries her best to set the bones right and stop the bleeding. We see Dallas stumble over too. Her face is bruised and bloodied. She's holding some kind of distress beacon she pulled from the ship. Speed Demon sees it and says, won't Ross find us? Dallas says, it's a private channel, trying to hold back the pain in her voice. To someone who owes me a favor. Don't know how soon he'll be here though. Speed Demon says, what do you think? Is she going to be okay? Dallas says, she'll live, but she's going to need medical attention soon. Suddenly, the transponder blinks green. Dallas says, lucky for us. They're coming sooner than I thought. Speed Demon says, already? Just who is this guy? Dallas says, he's an old friend from college who happens to be, let's say, powerful now. We see Songbird's eyes open. She looks around confused. James? Is everyone okay? Speed Demon says, yeah, we're fine. Help is coming. You're gonna be okay. Songbird says, oh, that's good, because This really hurts. Speed Demon says, yeah, breaking every bone in your body will do that to you. Songbird tries to laugh, but she's too hurt to really get it out, and the camera pulls back. We're going to cut to Sentry's home. We see Kiko, his wife, working on a computer in her living room. A piece of paper gets blown off the table, and she looks up to find the window open. We see Sentry standing in the room. His eyes are red. Kiko says, Robert, what's wrong? He lets it all out in a flood. I was wrong. My sister isn't dead, Kiko. The power broker wasn't who I thought she was. He drops a flash drive onto the table. I checked for myself. Looked through the government records. The things she did, Kiko. And I helped her every step of the way. Kiko says, what? He says, it was all lies, and I'm a monster. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What are you supposed to do when you realize you've been living a lie your whole life? Kiko says, you tell the truth. Sentry pauses for a moment. He says, I'm a villain. A monster. I killed innocent people. I killed good people. When Kiko asks him, do you want to be that man? Sentry shakes his head. She says, then you change. Be the person you want to be. Someone your son can follow. Be the man I know you are. You're so kind and you're loving, and you help people here. He looks towards her and says, be better. I just don't know if I can come back from this. Kiko says, it doesn't matter if you can. You try your best. And this sort of echoes back to Speed Demon and Songbird in the original Thunderbolts movie. I want there to be sort of a consistent theme of people who are maybe bad finding redemption. And Sentry is very bad. He does a lot of bad shit in this script. So we're going to see how that works out for him in the long run. We're going to hear the song Black by Danger Mouse play over a montage. We see Speed Demon learning to walk again. His leg is in a splint, and he's in some kind of strange hospital. As the montage continues, we see Songbird in a wheelchair in the hospital. They're sitting at a table playing Uno with each other. The next thing we see is John Walker's wife and son at a funeral. It's a small gathering, only 5 or 6 people. Not many people came to the funeral of a traitor to the United States. The camera backs up until we see Dallas watching in the distance. She's crying. She holds onto his shield in her hand. The song continues as she talks to herself. I don't know that I want this, John. It wasn't supposed to be for me. I just can't see the advantage to this. As the montage continues, we see Sentry in the hospital with his wife. He's holding his baby's son in his hands. His face is filled with pride. The baby's little hand grabs his finger and holds it. It looks towards him, and we can see its eyes are yellow. Lastly, we see Queen and Speed Demon approaching a door in the middle of an apartment complex. Speed Demon's on crutches, which I think is a funny visual. Queen reaches out to knock on the door and then stops. The song fades away and she says, I'm nervous, James. What if he doesn't want to see me? Speed Demon says, we talked about this. He's going to love you. Yeah, I know. It's just like, it's been so long. Speed Demon says, he's going to love you, reassuring her again. She says, yeah. Thank you, James. She reaches out and knocks on the door. There's a pause. We see Queen fiddling with her hands. Suddenly, we hear the door unlatch. The door slowly opens, and we see Arana's father from the opening scene. He's much older now, and has a scraggly beard. He says, what do you want? He looks down and sees Arana, and his eyes go narrow, then grow wide. He says, Arana? She says, Dad? He wraps her in a hug and squeezes her tight. He pulls back and says, look at you, you're so big, all grown up. I thought you were gone. He's bewildered. He starts to cry, tears of joy. He says, but you came back. Arana's crying too now. She says, I missed you so much. The camera pans back as the two of them are hugging. He invites them into the room, and we see Speed Demon and Arana sort of crouch walk into the room as the camera backs up. It passes through the brick wall of the apartment building, and we can see a small cocoon clinging to the wall. A butterfly works its way free and then flies off as the screen turns black. And that's the end of the movie. Really, as I said, this is a movie about Sentry soloing the Thunderbolts, and boy does he solo the Thunderbolts. When I heard Sentry was going to be maybe the villain in the in the Thunderbolts movie, I was already in the middle of writing this movie. And it became my personal mission to prove why that was a bad idea by writing Sentry into a Thunderbolts story and having him do what he would do. Because in what conceivable universe do the Thunderbolts stand a chance against Sentry? And this team is way more capable of fighting him than the one in the MCU. So I don't know how that's going to go. I look forward to seeing it with bated breath. I do have 3 after-credit scenes. We're going crazy because I wanted to cut one of these. And I couldn't figure out which one to cut, so I just decided, fuck it, this is my thing, we're going to leave them all in. The first after-credit scene, we see Thunderbolt Ross sitting in his backyard. And it's like a nice house, like, you know, he's a wealthy senator, so he's going to have a lot of land. There's a nice garden, and he sits at a small table. He looks out over the garden with a sense of fondness. Half out of focus, we see someone sit at his table. Ross says, I asked to be left alone. He turns to look, and we see the power broker sitting across from him. She says, it's a lovely morning, don't you think? Ross says, you're supposed to be dead. Power broker says, where's the fun in that? I do have a reputation to uphold. Ross slowly reaches his hand into his pocket and presses a panic button. Power broker laughs. Don't bother. Your guards are incapacitated. I took care of them myself. I couldn't have us interrupted after all. Ross says, what do you want? Power broker says, to cash in the favor you owe me. Ross says, and just what favor is that? There's a sense of anger in his voice. Power broker says, I'm the reason John Walker is finally dead. It was my Sentry who did the deed. Oh, please, Ross. You think I didn't know the Thunderbolts had broken into your raft? The most secure prison in the world. The most secure prison in the world, and yet a bunch of criminals managed to break in so easily. Not a good look. But I helped you save face. You caught the terrorist you've been after for so long. The feared U.S. agent. For that, I'd say you owe me a large favor. Ross says, so you came here just to mock me? His eyes grow red, and he begins to grow larger. His skin turns red, and soon he's giant. He turns into the Red Hulk. Power broker says, this is a bit of an overreaction. Red Hulk throws one of his giant fists towards her. The power broker simply reaches out a hand and catches it. She manages to hold back the fist with her bare hands. She says, how interesting. Project Rhinoceros Beetle. I thought this one was a failure, but clearly not. I suppose you're too stubborn to let it fail. She says that in like a mocking tone. Red Hulk says, oh. Power broker says, please, Ross, you're smarter than that. I'm the power broker. Of course I took some for myself. Project Sentry V213 Stable Serum, to be specific. I developed it myself, and I promise you, it's effective. She levitates off the ground, beginning to fly, and her eyes begin to grow bright yellow. Then the glow stops. I didn't come here to fight. On the contrary, actually. I've come to make an alliance. Red Hulk shrinks down until we see only Ross. He says, what kind of alliance would I want with a criminal like you? She says, we have mutual enemies. You hate the Thunderbolts for embarrassing you publicly. Let's see, twice now. I hate them because they tried to kill me, made my own betray me, tore down my empire. I'm going to see them dead for that. Ross says, so you want to work together to kill the Thunderbolts? Power broker says, exactly. We have nothing to lose working together and everything to gain. It'll simply make the kill easier. Power broker holds out a hand. What do you say? Ross snarls, fine. Just until they're dead. Yes. Just until they're dead. I can't imagine it'll be too much work. I've already got the perfect plan to do it. Alright, and then the second after credit scene, we're going to see Dallas sitting in a nice room. There's a knock at the door. Dallas says, come in. A man with a hood enters the room. He says, I'm sorry it took me so long to see you, Dallas. I really am so busy these days. Never a moment of rest, even for an old friend. Dallas says, you don't need to hide yourself behind that hood, you know. She reaches up to pull the hood back, and the man catches her arm, carefully pulling it away. He says, I know, Dallas. This is for me, I suppose. How have you found your accommodations? She says, they're wonderful. I owe you for this, Vic. The man says, don't worry about it. You're a friend. I always said your talents were wasted in the military, though being a vigilante isn't exactly what I had in mind. Dallas says, it's fulfilling work. We help people. If we have to break a few laws to do it, I'd say it's worth it. The man says, then we are aligned in our beliefs even still, Dallas. I have some plans to help the world myself. You and your Thunderbolts are welcome to stay here for as long as you would like. Dallas says, I really appreciate that. I still can't believe you really took your country back. I always thought it was just talk. He says, I rarely ever just talk. It's one of my flaws, I'm afraid. I am too much a man of action. We see a light appear on his arm. He says, oh. See, never a moment of rest. There is a matter I must attend to, but we'll catch up soon, I promise. I have a proposal for your Thunderbolts that I'd like you to consider. With that, the cloak man walks out of the room, leaving Dallas behind. He looks up, and beneath the cloak, we can see a scarred, burned face. He reaches to his waist and pulls up a metal mask, which he carefully slides on. For the first time, we get a look at Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom in the flesh. That's the end of the after credit scene. After credit scene 3, we see Ghost. She sits on the floor with her mask off. In front of her, we see an echo. It vibrates and flickers. She tries to speak with it. Ghost says, it's seemingly trying to speak with her, moving its mouth. Ghost says, I can't hear you. The echo frowns. It says something. Suddenly, the echo thinks to write something down and holds up a piece of paper. It flickers, but we can clearly see what it says. Danger. Kang. Ghost says, what is a Kang? The echo holds up a piece of paper again. We can see it says Conqueror. Ghost is trying to puzzle it out. Ghost says, Conqueror. Who does he conquer? The echo holds up its piece of paper once more. Only a single word is on it. Us. Suddenly, the echo vanishes immediately. Ghost says, Kang. The end. So obviously, these are setups for a couple of things. Thunderbolts 3 and my Avengers movie that I've already announced that I'm writing. So I use these after credit scenes to shill what I've got coming forward.
So that was how the cookie crumbles, as they say in France. I'm gonna just keep hanging out here in this place, which you don't have to worry about where I am right now. Seriously, stop bringing it up. Why do you guys keep bringing it up? What's wrong with you? If you want something else to watch right now, here we go. That right there is Ours, the Harry Potter murder mystery thing I wrote. And my dog is breathing into the mic. I'm very, very sorry about that. He's an idiot. He just ran out of the yard 10 seconds ago, and I had to go wrangle him because he's an idiot. If you look over here, you will see the Suicide Squad stuff. If you haven't watched that and you're here for Thunderbolts, you might enjoy that. They're similar. So that's really it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. I'm just going to speedrun this.